Three European nations just fired the opening shots in what might become the biggest leadership crisis in FIFA's modern history. And we're not talking about behind closed doors maneuvering or anonymous sources. We're talking about national football federations publicly, formally by name, withdrawing support for Gianni Infantino's re-election, 7 months before the vote even happens. On August 3rd, the Football Association of Wales became the first national federation in FIFA history to formally announce they're pulling support for Infantino's 2027-2031 term. And their statement wasn't some diplomatic, we've decided to pursue other options nonsense. They cited failures in good governance, processes, leadership, values, stakeholder management, communications, and sound judgment. That's not a vote of no confidence. That's a public autopsy of someone's entire career. Within hours, Serbia withdrew support. Then Sweden. England's Football Association is expected to follow, according to multiple sources. This isn't a trickle. This is a coordinated revolt. Let's rewind 2 days. On Friday, August 1st, FIFA abandoned its plan to sell approximately 20% of World Cup commercial rights, valued at $20 billion, to private investors. The scheme was supposed to raise up to $4.2 billion through something called FIFA Forward Enterprise. Private equity firms would get a stake in the single most valuable property in global sports, and FIFA would get a cash injection. Infantino could distribute to member federations, securing loyalty and votes. Except it didn't work, because on July 30th, UEFA voted to boycott all FIFA competitions if the plan went forward. Not threaten, voted. As in Europe's entire football ecosystem, clubs, leagues, players, federations would pull out of FIFA tournaments if Infantino pushed the sale through. And UEFA represents the commercial and competitive core of world football. You can't run a World Cup without Europe. You can't run FIFA without Europe. So Infantino blinked and the plan collapsed. But here's the part that's bigger than just one bad financial scheme. Carlos Cordero, Infantino's senior advisor, resigned the same day the plan died, August 1st, in protest of the sale. Cordero's not some mid-level staffer. He's the former president of U.S. Soccer, and he was brought in specifically to advise Infantino on North American strategy heading into the 2026 World Cup. He walked away in public protest. Then FIFA's own chief operating officer, Kevin Lamour, went on record saying FIFA staff were blindsided by the plan, the COO. That's not outside criticism. That's the organization's operational leadership saying the president's making decisions without telling the people running the actual organization. And now we've got federations formally withdrawing support before the election campaign has even started. Wales went first, but they're not alone. Finland withdrew support last week. That's 4 federations in less than 10 days. England's expected to make it 5, and these aren't fringe nations. Wales, Sweden, England, Serbia, these are UEFA members, World Cup participants, nations with serious political weight inside FIFA's structure. So what does this actually mean? FIFA's next Congress, the big meeting where all 211 member federations vote on leadership, is scheduled for March 18th, 2027 in Morocco. Infantino's re-election was supposed to be a formality. He was elected in 2016 after the Sepp Blatter era imploded in scandal, re-elected in 2019 and again in 2023. He's consolidated power, expanded the World Cup to 48 teams, brought in record revenues, and kept the Global South happy with development funding. But this week just shattered the illusion that he's untouchable. Here's why this is different from past FIFA scandals. The 2015 DOJ indictments that took down Blatter were external. Law enforcement from outside football dismantled the old guard. This time, it's internal. This is federations, UEFA especially, using FIFA's own governance structure to block Infantino's moves in real time. UEFA didn't wait for investigators or journalists. They voted to boycott, forced FIFA to abandon the sale, and now they're openly supporting member nations who are pulling endorsements. That's a power shift. That's UEFA saying we can remove you without needing a scandal, just by making FIFA non-functional. And Infantino doesn't have the political capital Blatter had. Blatter survived for decades because he built personal loyalty networks across Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean through development grants and personal relationships. Infantino's tried the same playbook, but the private equity scheme exposed the cracks. He proposed selling a stake in FIFA's core asset to raise cash for those same loyalty payments, and it backfired so badly that his own advisors resigned. Federations are now asking if he's willing to sell off World Cup rights to stay in power. What else is he willing to do? The timing's also brutal. We're 2 years removed from the biggest World Cup in history, 2026, co-hosted by the U.S., Canada, and Mexico, expanded to 48 teams, record attendance, record revenues. Infantino should be riding high. Instead, he's watching UEFA threaten legal action, member nations withdraw support, and his inner circle publicly distance themselves. The World Cup just ended, and the narrative's already shifted from FIFA delivered the biggest tournament ever to can FIFA survive its own president? And here's the kicker. Infantino doesn't have an obvious successor. FIFA's structure is designed to prevent any one regional bloc from controlling leadership, which means UEFA can block Infantino, but they can't just install their own candidate without support from Africa, Asia, and CONCACAF. So if Infantino's support collapses completely, we're looking at a potential power vacuum in the middle of an Olympic cycle with the next World Cup only 4 years out. That's not just a leadership transition, that's organizational chaos. So where does this go? If England joins the withdrawals this week, that's 5 UEFA nations in open revolt. If other European federations follow, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, Netherlands, that's a bloc too big to ignore. Infantino would have to either step aside before March or face a contested election where Europe's actively campaigning against him. And if he loses, that's the first time in modern FIFA history a sitting president gets voted out by member federations. Not arrested, not forced out by external pressure. Voted out. But there's also a scenario where Infantino survives. If he can hold Africa, Asia, and CONCACAF, he's still got the numbers. FIFA's voting structure gives smaller federations equal weight, and Infantino's spent years building relationships there. UEFA can boycott, federations can withdraw support, but if Infantino walks into Morocco in March with 106 votes locked in, he wins. And then what? Does UEFA actually follow through on the boycott threat? Do Wales, Sweden, Serbia, Finland, and England refuse to participate in FIFA competitions? That's not a political standoff anymore. That's a schism. That's the kind of split that could fracture world football for a generation. The next few weeks matter. If more federations join the revolt, Infantino's in real trouble. If the withdrawals stop at 5 or 6, he weathers it. But either way, the era of FIFA presidents operating without accountability just ended. Wales didn't ask Infantino to resign. They just announced they won't support him and listed every governance failure they could think of in one statement. That's a template. That's other federations watching to see if there's consequences. And if there aren't, expect more. We're 7 months out from an election that was supposed to be a coronation. Now, it's a referendum on whether FIFA's member nations are willing to let one executive consolidate power by selling off the sport's most valuable assets. Wales, Serbia, and Sweden just said no. Let's see who's next.